My name is Faith Lawson. I'm 34 years old and I am a nurse. 3 weeks ago, a dying man grabbed my hospital badge, read my last name, and started sobbing. He whispered 5 words that demolished everything I believed about my mom, my dad, and the first 32 years of my life. He said, "Your mother told me you died in the car accident." I grew up believing my father was a drug addict who chose heroin over his 2-year-old daughter. That was the story, Mom's story, the only story. I carried that wound into adulthood, through nursing school, through every late-night shift at the hospice where I hold the hands of people taking their last breaths. I built my entire career, my entire identity, on the belief that I knew what abandonment looked like. I was wrong about everything. Before I take you back to that night, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story earns it. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Now let me take you back to a Tuesday night in October, the night shift at Riverside Hospice, the night I met patient 47B. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio. Second floor, thin walls, a window that faces the parking lot of a Walgreens. I work the overnight shift at Riverside Hospice, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 3 nights a week. The rest of the time I sleep, eat standing over my kitchen sink, and try to remember what sunlight feels like. I chose this life, every part of it. When I was 7, I asked my mother where my daddy was. She was washing dishes. I remember because her hands stopped moving. The water kept running. She didn't turn around for a long time. "He chose drugs over you, baby," she said. Her voice cracked. "He's gone." I climbed onto the kitchen stool and hugged her from behind. Her shoulders were shaking. I said, "I won't leave you, Mama. I promise." I kept that promise for 27 years. I became a hospice nurse because of that moment. Because I know what it feels like when someone walks away from you. Or at least, I thought I did. I wanted to be the person who stays. The one who holds your hand in the dark at 3 a.m. when the morphine drip clicks and your family is too tired or too scared to sit with you anymore. Every patient I've ever cared for, every hand I've held while someone took their last breath, all of it traced back to that kitchen, that running water, my mother's shaking shoulders. I didn't know it yet, but everything I just told you, every word my mother said that day, was a lie. The running water was real, the shaking shoulders were real, but the story, the abandonment, the drugs, all of it, fabricated. October 14th, Tuesday. My shift started at 7 like always. I clocked in, checked the board, grabbed my clipboard. New admission in room 12B. Robert Lawson, 55, pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Transferred from a hospital in Wheeling, West Virginia. A friend's son who lived in Columbus had arranged the move so he could be closer during the final stretch. I didn't think anything of it. We get transfers all the time. I walked down the hall. The fluorescent lights hummed that flat, tired hum they always do after midnight. Room 12B was at the end of the corridor, past the supply closet that always smells like hand sanitizer and grief. I knocked twice, pushed the door open. He was thin, jaundiced, that deep yellow that tells you the liver is losing. His cheeks were hollow, his arms bruised from IV lines, but his eyes were open, alert, watching me. "Good evening, Mr. Lawson," I said. "I'm Faith, your night nurse. I'm going to check your vitals and make sure you're comfortable." He nodded, polite, quiet. I wrapped the blood pressure cuff around his arm and noticed his hands, thick calluses across the palms, scarred knuckles, the kind of hands that have spent decades gripping tools. A carpenter's hands, a builder's hands. I leaned across him to adjust the IV line. My badge swung forward on its lanyard, and I felt his fingers close around it. Firm, sudden, stronger than a man that sick should be. I looked down. He was staring at my badge. His lips were moving, but no sound came out. Then his eyes filled with tears. His hand was shaking. My badge was shaking with it. And then this dying man, this stranger, looked at me and started to cry. "Lawson," he whispered. Your name is Lawson. I stepped back, gently pulled my badge from his grip. Sir, it's okay. You're safe. Can you tell me what's wrong? He couldn't stop staring at me. His eyes moved across my face like he was reading something written there, something I couldn't see. How old are you? His voice was raw, barely above a breath. 34. He closed his eyes, his jaw clenched. A tear slid down the side of his face and disappeared into the pillow. I looked for you for 32 years. The heart monitor beeped steady behind him. The IV drip clicked. I stood perfectly still. Sir, I think you might be confused. The medication can sometimes... Your mother. He opened his eyes. Connie Mitchell. My blood stopped. Connie Mitchell. My mother's maiden name. The name she dropped the day she married Gerald Pemberton. The name I'd only ever seen on my own birth certificate, shoved in a drawer I never opened. A dying stranger in Columbus, Ohio, just said my mother's maiden name. She told me you died in the car accident, he said. When you were 2, she told me you were dead. That's not... My voice wasn't working right. Sir, my father was a drug addict who abandoned us. He died years ago. Robert Lawson looked at me with something I'd never seen in a patient's eyes before. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't delirium. It was recognition. I've never touched a drug in my life, he said, and I spent every penny I had trying to find you. His hand reached for mine. I didn't pull away. I'm your father, Faith. I never stopped looking. My training told me he was delirious. My gut told me something else entirely. The room felt smaller. The hum of the fluorescent light sounded louder. I could hear my own breathing. Too fast, too shallow. Robert lifted his hand, trembling, and pointed at the chair by the window. An old canvas backpack sat there, faded green, the kind you'd buy at a surplus store. It was the only personal item he'd brought. Open it, he said, the folder inside. My hands moved before my brain caught up. I unzipped the bag and pulled out a manila folder, thick and soft at the edges from years of handling. The paper had that warm, aged feel, like something that's been opened and closed 1,000 times. I flipped it open. The first page was a birth certificate, Commonwealth of West Virginia, Wheeling General Hospital. Father, Robert James Lawson. Mother, Constance Marie Mitchell. Child, Faith Marie Lawson. Date of birth, March 15, 1992. Below that, a photograph. A baby girl in a yellow onesie, dark hair, sitting on a patchwork quilt. I recognized the face. I've seen it in my mother's photo album, the one baby picture she kept. I turned the page. Private investigator receipts. Dozens of them. Dated from 1995 to 2018. Different firms, different cities, different amounts. All searching for the same person. Then the letters. Handwritten, on lined paper. Dear Faith, at the top of every one. I picked up the first letter. The date read, June 1995. Happy 3rd birthday, baby girl. Daddy doesn't know where you are, but I'm looking. I made you a birdhouse today. It's sitting on the porch in case you come home. My hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled. I stood in that hospice room at 2 a.m., holding proof that my entire life was built on a fabrication. And the man who supposedly abandoned me had spent 32 years writing letters to a daughter he was told was dead. I made it to the hallway before my knees buckled. I sat on the cold linoleum floor, back against the wall, the manila folder in my lap. The fluorescent light above me flickered once. Somewhere down the hall, a patient's call button chimed, and another nurse's footsteps answered it. I called Donna. It was 3 a.m. She picked up on the second ring. That's the thing about hospice nurses. We never fully sleep. Faith, what's wrong? I think my patient is my biological father. I heard the words leave my mouth and they sounded insane. And I think my mother lied to both of us for 32 years. Silence. Then, tell me everything. I told her. The badge, the name, Connie Mitchell, the birth certificate, the letters, the investigator receipts, all of it, in a rush, sitting on the floor of a hospice hallway at 3 a.m. Dana didn't interrupt. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. Can you verify any of this independently? The birth certificate matches. The maiden name is right. The dates line up. Then you need to find out the truth, Faith, not for him, for you. I looked down the corridor toward room 12B. Through the cracked door, I could see the green glow of his heart monitor, the steady rhythm of the line. He was sleeping now. The machines breathed for him in that mechanical way that always sounds lonelier than silence. This man, this stranger who knew my mother's maiden name, had 4 to 6 weeks to live, maybe less. If I said nothing, he'd die believing his daughter was dead. If I confronted my mother, I'd blow apart 32 years of the only story I'd ever known. But there was something else in that folder, something I didn't see until the next morning. I went back to Robert's room at 6 a.m., just before my shift ended. He was awake, weaker than the night before, but his mind was sharp. You learn to tell the difference between confusion and clarity in this job. His eyes were clear. I sat down. I need you to tell me what happened, from the beginning. He took a breath that cost him something. 94. You were 2. I came home from the shop. I built furniture, custom pieces, and the house was empty. Her clothes were gone. Your crib was stripped. Car was gone. He paused, swallowed hard. 2 weeks later, a friend of hers called. Told me Connie said to stop looking. Said you and her got into a car accident in Kentucky while she was running. Said you didn't make it. The heart monitor beeped. I said nothing. I called the police. Every hospital in Kentucky. No accident report matched. No records. Nothing. Then why did you believe it? I didn't. Not fully. But I was 23, Faith. No money, no lawyer. Her friends swore it was true. And your mother, she just vanished. He told me about his friend Thomas Harlan, a law student back then, now a retired attorney in Wheeling. Thomas helped him file a missing persons report. They scraped together money for a private investigator. But my mother had crossed state lines, changed her phone number, started fresh. In 1994, there was no Facebook, no Google, no way to find someone who didn't want to be found. Thomas still has everything, Robert said. Every document, every receipt, every dead end. He gave me a phone number, written in pencil on the back of a hospital menu. Call him. He's waited for this call as long as I have. I didn't lose you, Faith. You were taken from me. I sat in my car in the Riverside parking lot and dialed Thomas Harlan's number. 7:15 a.m. The sun was just coming up, flat and gray through the October clouds. He answered on the third ring. An older man's voice, cautious. Mr. Harlan, my name is Faith Lawson. Robert Lawson gave me your number. Dead silence. 5 seconds. 10. Then a sound I wasn't expecting. A 67-year-old man, crying. Oh my God. His voice broke completely. You're alive. He knew who I was before I said another word. Thomas confirmed everything. He still had the files, private investigator reports, copies of the missing persons case, correspondence with police departments across 3 states. He'd kept them in a fireproof box in his office for 32 years. Your father spent his savings looking for you, Thomas said. He refinanced his house twice, sold his truck. He never remarried, Faith. He never stopped. Why didn't he go to the police again? He did, multiple times. But without proof she faked the accident, it was his word against hers. And she was the mother. In 1994, that meant something different than it does now. Then Thomas said something that made me pull over. I still have the original missing persons file. And something else. A letter your mother wrote to Bobby in 1994. She didn't mail it. Her friend gave it to him later. In that letter, she admits you were alive. I gripped the steering wheel. She wrote it down? In her own hand. Bobby's kept the original. I have a notarized copy. The sun broke through the clouds for a moment and lit up the dashboard. I stared at it without seeing anything. So now I had a dying father I'd never known, a mother who'd lied to my face every single day, and a question I couldn't avoid any longer. What do I say to her? I need to pause here for a second, because right now I'm standing in the parking lot of a hospice at 7 in the morning, and a 67-year-old attorney just told me my mother wrote a letter, in her own handwriting, admitting I was alive. And she still let my father believe I was dead for 32 years. If your mother ever lied to you about something that changed your entire life, if you ever found out a truth that rewrote your past, type rewrite in the comments. And if you're still here, hit that subscribe button, because what I did next, I still don't know if it was the right thing. Now, back to that October. Sunday. 4 days after I met Robert. I drove 45 minutes to my mother's house in the suburbs outside Dayton, the Pemberton house. That's how I'd always thought of it. Not as mine, but as theirs. A 4-bedroom colonial on a cul-de-sac. Manicured lawn. Gerald's Lincoln in the driveway. A blessed sign over the front door. Dinner was pot roast. Gerald talked about the dealership, something about a fleet order from a construction company. My mother passed the bread and asked about my shifts. Normal. Perfectly normal. I waited until Gerald got up to refill his iced tea. Mom, what was my real father's full name? Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Just for a second, a hitch so brief you'd miss it if you weren't looking. But I was looking. Robert something. She set the fork down. I don't remember. Why? Robert James Lawson, born 1971 in Wheeling, West Virginia, carpenter. The dining room clock ticked. Gerald came back from the kitchen and looked between us. Where is this coming from? My mother said. Her voice was steady now, controlled. Did someone contact you? I noted her phrasing. She didn't say, how do you know that? She said, did someone contact you? The response of a person guarding a secret, not a person hearing something for the first time. I didn't say he contacted me, Mom. I said his name. Faith. She folded her napkin. Precise, deliberate folds. That man nearly destroyed us. I protected you from him. I'm not doing this at the dinner table. Gerald set his glass down. Connie, what's going on? Nothing. She stood up and started clearing plates. Faith is bringing up ancient history. It's nothing. But her hands were shaking. The plates rattled when she stacked them. She ran the faucet hard. Water hit the steel sink like static. I followed her into the kitchen. Gerald stayed at the table, confused, a fork full of pot roast frozen in midair. Mom, he's in my hospice. She didn't turn around. Her shoulders went rigid under her blouse. He's dying, pancreatic cancer, and he has documents. Now she turned, slowly, and I watched something shift behind her eyes, a gear clicking into place. Her face softened, her lip trembled. She pressed a hand to her chest. How can you do this to me? She said. Her voice quivered. After everything I did for you? I worked 2 jobs. I kept you safe from that man. I gave you a life. Gerald appeared in the kitchen doorway. Faith, you're upsetting your mother. Whatever this is, it can wait. It can't wait, I said. He has weeks left, maybe less. Documents? My mother's voice changed. The trembling stopped, colder now, sharper. What documents? A birth certificate, letters, private investigator receipts from the last 30 years. She stared at me. The faucet was still running. Water pooled against a stack of dirty plates. He's a liar and a con man, she said. He always was. Connie. Gerald stepped closer. What's going on? Nothing is going on. She spun toward him. Faith is being manipulated by a dying stranger who wants attention. That's what addicts do. I watched her. The tears were gone. The trembling was gone. She'd cycled through 3 emotions in 45 seconds. Grief, fragility, rage. like someone flipping through a deck of cards, looking for the one that works. She didn't deny it. She didn't say, "That's impossible." She said, "He's a liar," and that told me everything. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the front door. My mother was right behind me. She caught the car door before I could close it. The porch light threw her shadow long across the driveway. Gerald was still inside. It was just us. "Listen to me." Her voice dropped low. Not the quivering voice from the kitchen. Not the angry voice either. This was something else. Flat, measured, surgical. "That man is dying. In a few weeks he'll be gone, and this will be over. All of it. You want me to wait for him to die so the truth dies with him? I want you to think about what you're doing." She leaned closer. "If you bring this up again, if you tell anyone, I will make sure everyone knows you harassed a dying patient. I know people on that hospital board, Faith." The air went cold in my chest. "Are you threatening my career?" "I'm protecting this family, like I always have." I looked at her. Really looked. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother without the filter of gratitude. Without the story of the brave single mom who sacrificed everything. I saw a woman who was cornered, who was calculating, and who would burn down anything, including her own daughter's livelihood, to keep a secret. "He has a letter, Mom." I kept my voice even. "A letter you wrote, in your handwriting, admitting I was alive." The color drained from her face, not slowly. All at once, like someone pulled a plug. She stepped back from the car. I turned the key in the ignition. "You didn't protect me, Mom. You imprisoned me in a story you made up." I pulled out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, she was standing under the porch light. Alone, arms at her sides. She didn't go inside for a long time. Monday morning. I walked into Riverside with 2 cups of coffee and a headache that had been sitting behind my eyes since Sunday night. My supervisor, Karen, called me into her office before I could even put my bag down. "Faith, sit down. I got a phone call this morning." I sat. "A woman identifying herself as your mother called our patient services line. She reported that you're engaged in an inappropriate personal relationship with a patient. She said your judgment is compromised and that you should be removed from direct care." I set my coffee on her desk, carefully, because my hand wanted to shake and I wouldn't let it. "Karen, that patient is my biological father. I just found out 4 days ago." Karen leaned back. She'd been a hospice administrator for 20 years. She'd heard a lot of things in that chair, but I could tell this one caught her off guard. "I understand this is personal," she said. "But you know the protocol. If there's a familial connection, I can't keep you assigned to his care. I have to reassign." I nodded. I knew the rules. I'd followed them my whole career. "I'll step back from his medical care, but I'd like to visit him during off hours, as family." Karen agreed. Dana volunteered to take over Robert's case that afternoon. She squeezed my arm on the way out. "I'll keep you updated on everything, I promise." I stood in the break room and stared at the vending machine. My mother had actually done it. She'd called my workplace. She'd tried to get me pulled from my father's side. Dana came up behind me. "She's trying to separate you from him before he dies, so the truth dies with him." Then Karen mentioned something that would matter later. "By the way, your mother, Connie Pemberton, she's getting a community service award at St. Matthew's this Saturday. She invited the hospital. Did you want to go?" Thomas Harlan gave me a phone number for Margaret Lawson, my grandmother, Robert's mother. 78 years old, still living in the same house in Wheeling, West Virginia, where my father grew up. I dialed the number on my lunch break, sitting in my car with the engine off and the October wind rocking the frame. An older woman answered. Careful voice, the kind of person who doesn't get many calls anymore. "Mrs. Lawson, my name is Faith. Faith Lawson. Thomas Harlan gave me your number." 10 seconds of silence. I could hear a clock ticking on her end. Then a sound. Small, broken, like a teacup cracking. "I know your voice," she was crying. "You sound exactly like your daddy when he was young." I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. She told me things I wasn't ready to hear. She'd kept my nursery. 32 years, and the room was still there. Butterfly wallpaper, faded now, and the oak crib my father built before I was born. She hadn't changed a thing. Bobby never gave up, she said. He went to the missing children's database every year. Updated your photo, what he thought you might look like at 5, at 10, at 15. He had an artist draw them. Every Christmas, he bought me a present, wrapped it, labeled it, put it on the shelf in that room. I have a box of birthday presents for you, Faith. 32 of them. One for every year. Then she told me something that landed like a fist. Your mother called me once, 1998. She said, "Stop looking, she's gone." I asked, "Is she really dead?" And Connie said, "She is to you." My grandmother had spent 28 years carrying that sentence. Your daddy never celebrated another birthday after you were gone, Margaret said. He told me birthdays don't count when your child is missing. The FedEx envelope arrived at my apartment Wednesday afternoon. Thomas Harlan had sent it overnight from Wheeling. I sat on my kitchen floor. I don't know why the floor, maybe because everything solid felt like it was dissolving, and I needed something flat and cold beneath me. Inside the envelope, 3 items. The first was a letter, handwritten on notebook paper, the kind with the blue lines and the ragged edge where it was torn from the spiral. Undated, but Thomas's note said it was from early 1994, given to Robert by a friend of my mother's, who had a crisis of conscience months after delivering Connie's original message. I read it. Bobby, I'm leaving and I'm taking Faith. Don't come looking. I told everyone she died. It's easier this way. I need a clean start. She'll be better off not knowing you. I read it again. And again. I held the paper up to the light. I compared the handwriting to a birthday card my mother had sent me the previous March. Happy 34th, sweetheart. Love, Mom. The looping A, the sharp downstroke on the Y, the way she crossed her T high, identical. The second item was a private investigator's report from 2003. The investigator had tracked a Connie Pemberton to Dayton, Ohio. Married to Gerald Pemberton. Daughter named Faith, enrolled in Fairview Middle School. By the time Robert scraped together money to send someone in person, my mother had moved us across town. Again. The third item was a photo. Robert, maybe 23, holding a baby girl in a yellow onesie. He was grinning so wide his eyes were almost closed. On the back, in pencil, Bobby and Faith, 4 months. I sat on my kitchen floor with that letter in my hands and read one sentence over and over. It's easier this way. Easier. She stole 32 years from my father, and from me, because it was easier. Thursday. Donna called me at noon. Faith, his numbers are dropping. Bilirubin's through the roof. He's sleeping more. I'd say 2, maybe 3 weeks now. Not 4. I drove straight to Riverside after my shift ended. I wasn't his nurse anymore. I signed in as a visitor. Family. Robert was propped up on pillows, thinner than 5 days ago. But when I walked in, his eyes lit up. He patted the edge of the bed. We talked. Not about my mother, not about documents or timelines or lies. We talked like a father and a daughter, trying to fill 32 years into an afternoon. He told me he'd built me a crib from white oak before I was born, carved little birds along the headboard. Took me 3 weeks, he said. Your mama said I was crazy, spending that long on something a baby would outgrow in a year. It's still at Grandma's house? Margaret wouldn't let anyone touch it. He asked the question I'd been dreading. Did Connie, your mother, did she at least treat you well? I thought about it. Really thought. She fed me, clothed me, kept a roof over my head, pushed me through school. But she also controlled every conversation, every memory, every question I ever had about my past. She built a wall around my history and told me it was a garden. She gave me a roof and a story, I said. But not the truth. Robert nodded slowly. I don't want you to hate her. I just want you to know. I never left. I was here the whole time. Then he told me one more thing. In 2010, my mother contacted him. Out of the blue. She wanted money. Margaret owned some land, and Connie heard about it through an old connection. Robert refused. Connie disappeared again. She'd known he was alive. She'd known he was still looking. And she went home and looked me in the eye and told me he was dead. Friday afternoon. My phone rang. Mom. Her voice was honey, warm, bright, like nothing had happened. Like Sunday dinner was a dream I'd had. Honey, you know my tribute is tomorrow. The whole church will be there. Pastor Williams is giving a speech about my years of service. I need you front and center. Mom, we need to talk about, not now. She cut me off cleanly. Tomorrow. Wear something nice. Gerald is handling the flowers. Mrs. Patterson is doing the slideshow. I listened to her describe the event. 200 people, a podium, a projection screen, 30 years of photos, Connie volunteering at food drives, Connie mentoring young mothers, Connie raising her daughter alone against all odds. The centerpiece of the slideshow, she said, was a sequence titled A Mother's Sacrifice. Photos of her and me through the years, first day of school, high school graduation, nursing school commencement, all narrated by a story that never happened the way she told it. I called Dana after I hung up. She's going to stand on that stage and tell 200 people she raised me alone because my father abandoned us, while he is dying 20 minutes away. So what are you going to do? I'm going to go, and I'm going to listen, and then we'll see. I want you to know something. I didn't plan anything that night. I didn't sit at my kitchen table rehearsing a speech or packing ammunition. I didn't walk into that church with a script or a vendetta. But my mother had a plan. She'd had one for 32 years. And her plan required me to sit quietly and smile while she performed the role of a lifetime in front of everyone who'd ever trusted her. I just couldn't do it anymore. Thursday evening. I visited Robert one last time before Saturday. He was sitting up. A good day, the nurses said. Some color in his cheeks. He'd eaten half a cup of broth, which for him now was a feast. He reached under his pillow and pulled out a small wooden box. Maple, hand-carved, shaped like a heart. The grain was polished smooth from years of handling. I made this for you when you were 1, he said. Carried it with me everywhere. Hospital to hospital, apartment to apartment. It was the only thing I never packed in a box. I opened it. Inside, on a folded slip of paper, in careful pencil letters, Faith Marie Lawson. My heart walks outside my body. I cried. I hadn't cried in years. Not when patients died. Not when relationships ended. Not when I sat alone in my apartment on Thanksgiving and pretended I was fine. But I cried then. Sitting on the edge of a hospice bed, holding a wooden heart a man carved for a daughter he thought was dead. Robert let me cry. He didn't say anything. He just held my hand and let me. When I could speak again, I called Margaret on video. She answered from the kitchen in Wheeling. When she saw Robert and me together on the screen, she pressed her hand to her mouth and made a sound that wasn't a word, just 32 years of grief escaping through a 4-inch phone. Bobby, she whispered. She's there. She's really there. I know, Mom. I can see her. I promised her I'd come to Wheeling, that I'd see the room, the crib, the presents. Robert smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him. There's one more thing Thomas has, he said. A cassette tape, your first words. I recorded them. He paused. You said dada first, by the way. Your mother was furious. Saturday morning. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror in a navy blue dress I hadn't worn since a coworker's wedding. My hair was pulled back, minimal makeup. I looked calm. Inside I was detonating. The manila folder sat on my kitchen counter. I stared at it. Then I picked it up and slid it into my purse. I didn't decide to use it. I just couldn't leave it behind. I called Dana from the parking lot of my apartment building. I don't know what I'm going to do. "You'll know when you get there," she said. "Trust yourself." I drove 16 minutes to St. Matthew's Community Church. It was a brick building with white columns and a steeple that needed painting. The parking lot was full. Buicks, Fords, a couple of Lexuses from Gerald's dealership friends. A banner stretched between two poles near the entrance, celebrating Connie Pemberton, 30 years of faithful service. Faithful service. I sat in the car for 2 full minutes, both hands on the wheel, engine off. Then I got out. The fellowship hall was set up with rows of folding chairs, 200 at least, white tablecloths on the refreshment tables, a podium with a microphone, a projection screen showing a slideshow on loop, Connie at the food pantry, Connie with the youth group, Connie holding a plaque. I saw Gerald in the front row, pressed shirt, polished shoes, beaming. Pastor Williams stood near the podium, reviewing note cards. Mrs. Patterson fussed with the laptop connected to the projector. And there was my mother, center stage, navy dress. We matched, and the irony of that was almost too much. She was smiling the way she always smiled in public, wide, warm, unassailable. She spotted me, waved. I sat down in the third row. My folder was in my bag. My hands were steady. Pastor Williams walked to the podium. "Today," he said, "we honor a woman whose greatest achievement was raising her daughter alone, with nothing but faith and courage." The church erupted in applause. I didn't clap. My mother stepped up to the podium. The applause faded into that respectful quiet you only hear in churches and courtrooms. The slideshow started behind her. Baby photos of me. My mother holding me in a hospital gown. But I knew now that the man cropped out of the frame was Robert, not some anonymous nurse. Connie at a playground, pushing me on a swing. First day of kindergarten. "When Faith's father abandoned us," she began, "I had nothing." She paused for effect. 200 people leaned forward. No money, no family nearby, just a 2-year-old girl and a prayer. A woman in the second row dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Gerald nodded, chin high. "I worked 2 jobs, waitressing during the day, cleaning offices at night. I didn't sleep for 2 years. She laughed softly. The audience laughed with her. She turned to look at me. The slideshow landed on my nursing school graduation photo. And my daughter, my beautiful Faith. She became a hospice nurse. She takes care of the dying. Her voice cracked perfectly. Because she knows what it feels like to be left behind. I felt the blood climb my neck. My ears went hot. She was using me, my career, my pain, the entire identity I'd built on a lie she created. She was performing it for 200 witnesses like a one-woman show. "I want to thank my daughter for never giving up on me," she said, "even when her father gave up on us." She just slandered a dying man in a church. A man lying in a hospice bed 20 minutes away, holding a wooden heart he carved for a daughter he thought was dead. She looked at me and smiled, and I realized she wasn't honoring me. She was using me. One last time. Let me stop here, because I know some of you are screaming at your screen right now. I know, because I was screaming inside too. My mother was standing on a stage, in a church, calling my dying father an abandoner, while he lay in a hospice bed 20 minutes away holding a box he carved for me when I was 1. If you've ever watched someone lie about you or about someone you love in front of a crowd, type "enough" in the comments. Because what happened next, I didn't plan. But I couldn't sit there. Not one more second. Here's what happened. The applause rolled through the room like a wave. My mother stepped back from the podium, glowing. Pastor Williams moved toward the microphone. "Thank you, Connie. That was beautiful." He looked out at the audience. "Would anyone like to say a few words about our guest of honor?" Silence. The polite kind, where everyone smiles and waits for someone else to go first. I stood up. My mother's smile widened. She tilted her head, the proud mother tilt, the one she'd practiced in mirrors. She thought I was going to thank her. I walked to the stage. My heels clicked on the wood floor, each step louder than the last. 200 people watched me climb the 3 steps to the podium. I adjusted the microphone, took one breath. Thank you, Pastor Williams, and thank you all for being here today. I looked at my mother. She was standing 4 feet to my left, still smiling, hands clasped in front of her. The slideshow behind us glowed with a photo of her and me at my college graduation. Mom, I said, you've told this story for 32 years. The story of the father who abandoned his daughter. You told it to me. You told it to Gerald. You told it to this church. Her smile flickered. A micro-movement. Most people wouldn't have caught it. And tonight, I'm going to tell you the truth. The room went still. Not quiet. Still. The kind of silence where you can hear the person next to you swallow. Gerald uncrossed his legs. Pastor Williams took a half-step back. My mother's hands, still clasped, tightened until her knuckles turned white. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't shaking. I was speaking the way I speak to families in the middle of the night when I have to tell them their loved one doesn't have long. Calm, clear, steady. I'm not here to humiliate my mother. I'm here because a man is dying, and he deserves for the truth to be heard at least once. My father did not abandon me. The words landed on the room like a stone in a pond. I could see the ripples. A woman in the 4th row put her hand over her mouth. A man near the back leaned forward, elbows on knees. His name is Robert James Lawson. He's a carpenter from Wheeling, West Virginia. He has never used drugs in his life, and right now he is dying of pancreatic cancer at Riverside Hospice, 20 minutes from this church. A gasp. Several gasps, actually, layered on top of each other like a chorus. In 1994, my mother took me across state lines. She told my father I had died in a car accident. She told me he was a drug addict who abandoned us. She did this so she could start a new life. I kept my eyes on the middle of the room, not on my mother. I could feel her beside me, vibrating like a wire about to snap. My father spent 32 years searching for me. He hired private investigators. He filed missing persons reports. He wrote me a letter for every birthday. 32 letters. I've read them all. I heard a chair creak in the front row. Gerald. And I have her handwritten letter. I turned to look at my mother for the first time. In her own handwriting, addressed to a friend, in which she admits I was alive and she was hiding me from my father. Faith, stop! My mother lunged toward the podium. You don't know what you're— Mom. My voice didn't rise. I know everything. Gerald stood up. His face had gone from ruddy to gray. The woman next to him reached for his arm, but he didn't seem to feel it. The church was so quiet I could hear the ceiling fan. My mother grabbed the edge of the podium. Her knuckles were bone white. She's confused, she said to the room. Her voice had that stretched quality. Too tight, too bright. That man is manipulating her. He's a dying con man who wants— I opened my purse, pulled out the manila folder, unfolded the letter. Bobby, I read aloud. My voice carried through the microphone and bounced off the cinder block walls. I'm leaving and I'm taking Faith. Don't come looking. I told everyone she died. A woman in the middle section made a sound. Not a word, just a sharp intake of breath that cut through the room. I looked at my mother. That's your handwriting, Mom. I've been reading it on birthday cards for 30 years. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Connie. Gerald's voice came from the front row, raw. Is this true? Gerald, don't. Is this true? The silence stretched 5 seconds. 10. My mother's eyes swept the room, looking, I think, for one friendly face. One person who would stand up and say this was all a misunderstanding. She didn't find one. She didn't say no. A rustling in the middle of the room. Helen Bradford, 70 years old, charter member of St. Matthew's, picked up her handbag, stood, and walked out. She didn't slam the door. She just left, quietly. The way people leave when they've made a decision they won't reverse. Then another woman stood. Then a couple near the end of the row. Gerald sat back down heavily. He put his hands over his face. My mother stood on the stage she'd built for herself, in front of the slideshow she'd curated, beneath a banner with her name on it. And for the first time in 32 years, the audience wasn't clapping. "I did what I had to do," she said. "To no one. To everyone. You don't understand." I folded the letter, slid it back into the folder, closed the clasp. I looked at my mother one more time. She was gripping the podium like it was the only thing holding her up. Maybe it was. "I'm not doing this to hurt you," I said. "But I spent 32 years grieving a father who was grieving me. That ends today." I stepped back from the microphone. "I'm going to see my father now. If you have anything truthful to say to me, not excuses, not threats, not after everything I did for you, you know where I am." I walked down the 3 steps. My heels sounded different now, lighter, or maybe it was just that the silence made everything louder. Pastor William stood off to the side, hands at his waist, staring at the floor. He looked like a man whose sermon had just been rewritten by someone else. I moved down the center aisle. 200 faces. Some looked at me with pity, some with admiration. Some couldn't look at me at all. A woman I didn't recognize squeezed my arm as I passed. An older man nodded once. Near the back, a woman, gray-haired, thick glasses, caught my hand. "God bless you, honey," she whispered. I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. Behind me I heard Gerald's voice, muffled and cracked. 30 years, Connie. 30 years you told me." I pushed open the double doors. The October air hit my face, cool and sharp, and I gulped it like water. My car, my keys, the engine turning over. I am not your prop. I am not your story. I am Robert Lawson's daughter. And he deserves to hear that from me before he dies. I drove straight to my father. I didn't look back. I walked into room 12B at Riverside Hospice at 6:47 p.m. The sun was going down outside the window, throwing long amber light across the linoleum floor. Robert was awake. His eyes tracked me as I came through the door. He looked smaller than he had Thursday. The disease was eating him faster now. But his face, when he saw me, did something that broke and rebuilt my heart in the same second. He smiled. I sat down, took his hand. His skin was paper-thin and warm. "Dad?" I'd never said that word to anyone in my life. It tasted unfamiliar. "Right. I just told 200 people the truth." His eyes filled. He didn't have the strength to cry properly. His body couldn't spare the water. But the tears came anyway, slow, tracking down the hollows of his cheeks. He squeezed my hand, weak, but deliberate. I pulled out my phone and called Margaret. She answered from Wheeling, standing in her kitchen. I could see the yellow curtains behind her. When the video connected and she saw us, her son and her granddaughter together, in the same frame, she pressed both hands to her face. "Bobby," she said through her fingers. "She's there. She's really there." "I know, Mom." His voice was a thread. "I can see her." "We found her," Margaret said. "After all this time." "You found her, Bobby." She was sobbing now. "You never stopped." I held the phone between us so they could see each other. Robert's hand found the screen and touched it. Touched his mother's face through the glass. We stayed like that. 3 people in 2 cities, connected by a 4-inch screen and 32 years of loss. I read him his own letters, the ones he'd written me, the ones I'd never received. He listened with his eyes closed and a small, tired smile. "I'm here, Dad," I said. "I'm right here, and I'm not leaving." Sunday morning. My phone buzzed at 8. Gerald. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, maybe the nurse, maybe the daughter, picked up. "Faith." His voice sounded hollowed out, like someone had scooped the inside of him clean. "I need to talk to you. Not about your mother. About me." I waited. I didn't know. A long exhale. I swear to God, Faith. She told me your father was a violent drug addict who tried to hurt you as a baby. She said she barely got out. She cried when she told me. I held her. I stared at the wall of my apartment. A crack ran from the ceiling to the window frame. I'd never noticed it before. I found out last night that she's been lying to me for 30 years. About where she came from, about who she married, about how she ended up in Dayton. He paused. About everything. Where are you? Motel off Route 35. Couldn't sleep in that house. Can't even look at the photos on the wall anymore. Everything in those frames is a prop. Gerald, this isn't your fault. I know that in my head. His voice cracked. But I raised you, Faith. I drove you to school. I taught you to change a tire. I walked you to the door on prom night and told that boy if he didn't have you home by 11, I'd sell his daddy's Chevy for parts. I almost smiled. And now I find out your real father was out there the whole time, looking for you, spending every dollar he had. And I was just the replacement. You weren't a replacement, Gerald. You were the only father I knew. And that matters. He was quiet for a while. Then, she called a lawyer this morning. I don't know what she's planning. Neither did I. Monday afternoon. My phone buzzed while I was charting. Front desk at Riverside. Faith, there's a woman in the lobby asking to see Robert Lawson, says she's family. I knew who it was before the receptionist finished. I walked down the corridor and pushed through the double doors. My mother stood in the waiting area in slacks and a cardigan, purse clutched against her chest. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in 2 days. Her makeup was careful, but her eyes were swollen underneath it. I want to see him, she said. Why? Because I need to explain. Explain what? I kept my voice level, clinical. That you told him his daughter was dead? He already knows why you did it, Mom. He's known for 32 years. Her jaw tightened. The softness dropped. I watched it happen. The mask going back on, the calculation clicking behind her eyes. Fine. Then I'll tell the hospital you're emotionally compromised and shouldn't be anywhere near patients. I'm not his nurse anymore. You already got me removed from his care, remember? She blinked. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. I could see her running through her options, flipping through the cards again, and coming up empty. Mom, here's what's going to happen. I took one step toward her. Not aggressive, just close enough that she couldn't look away. I'm going to spend whatever time Dad has left with him. You can either accept that, or don't. But you don't get to control this. Not anymore. She stood in the lobby, fluorescent light washing out what was left of her composure. A nurse walked past and glanced at us. A visitor flipped a page of a magazine without reading it. You controlled the story for 32 years, I said. That's over. You don't get to write the ending. I turned around and walked back through the double doors. The fallout came in pieces, the way it always does in small communities. Not one explosion, a series of cracks, spreading outward. Tuesday. Pastor Williams called me. His voice was gentle, careful, the way pastors sound when they're delivering news they've prayed about. Faith, I wanted you to hear this from me. The church leadership met last night. Connie's Community Service Award has been formally withdrawn, and we've asked her to step down from the Women's Ministry Council, effective immediately. He paused. This isn't about punishment. It's about trust. And trust, once broken like this, well. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Gerald filed for legal separation the same week. He kept the house. It was his before the marriage. The dealership was his name, his money, his credit. Connie moved into a 1-bedroom rental off Wilmington Pike. I heard this from Gerald, not from her. The neighborhood talked. Of course it did. Dayton isn't New York. When someone falls from grace at St. Matthew's, the whole zip code hears about it by Wednesday. I didn't feel good about any of it. I want that to be clear. I didn't go home and celebrate. I didn't call anyone and say, she got what she deserved. I went home and sat in the dark and thought about the fact that my mother was alone now, and that part of it was my doing, and that the other part, the bigger part, was hers. Dana said it best. She came over that night with Thai food and 2 bottles of water. You didn't destroy her life, Faith. She did. 32 years ago. Then something unexpected. A woman from the church, Louise Parker, 70 years old, called me out of the blue. I need to tell you something, she said. In 2008, a man came to St. Matthew's looking for Connie Pemberton. He asked if she had a daughter named Faith. I said yes, and he started crying in the parking lot. My father had come to my mother's church, looking for me, 18 years ago, and no one knew what it meant, until now. I drove to Wheeling on a Saturday, 2 hours and change on I-70, through the hills of eastern Ohio and into the West Virginia panhandle, where the trees were putting on their last October show, red and gold burning against a gray sky. Margaret's house sat on a quiet street, white clapboard, blue roof, a porch swing that looked like it hadn't moved in years but had been wiped down recently. She was waiting at the front door. She didn't say anything. She just wrapped her arms around me and held on. Her head barely reached my shoulder. She smelled like lavender soap and coffee, and she held me like she was trying to memorize the weight of me. "Come inside," she finally said. "I have something to show you." She took my hand and led me upstairs. Second door on the left. She opened it, and I stepped into a room I'd never seen but somehow remembered. Butterfly wallpaper. Faded. The purple had gone gray. The greens had turned to sage. The oak crib Robert built sat beneath the window, the carved birds along the headboard worn smooth by 32 years of Margaret running her fingers over them. And on the shelf along the far wall, boxes, gift-wrapped, 32 of them, some in glossy paper, some in Sunday comics wrap, some in brown paper bags with hand-drawn ribbons, each one labeled in Robert's careful pencil: Faith, age 3. Faith, age 7. Faith, age 16. I opened the first one. A cloth doll with yellow yarn hair, age 10. A beginner's science kit, still in plastic. Age 16. A leather-bound journal. Age 21. A necklace with a small gold letter F. Each one had a card. "Happy birthday, Faith. Love, Dad." I sat on the floor of that nursery, holding the cloth doll meant for a 3-year-old, and I cried until Margaret sat down beside me and put her arm around my shoulders and said nothing. Because there was nothing to say. 32 presents I never opened. 32 years I never got back. But I was here now. And that had to be enough. 2 weeks after the tribute, Robert had a rally. Hospice nurses know about rallies. They come near the end. A sudden burst of clarity, of energy, like the body gathering everything it has left for one final surge. Some families mistake it for recovery. We know better. He was sitting up when I walked in. Not propped, sitting on his own. His eyes were clear, his voice stronger than it had been in days. "Bring me that box," he said, pointing to the wooden heart on the bedside table. I handed it to him. He turned it over in his hands, ran his thumb along the grain. "I made this from a piece of maple that fell in my mom's backyard," he said. "The day you were born, I sat on the porch and carved it. Took me 4 hours. Your mama was asleep in the hospital. I just sat there carving, thinking, I'm somebody's father now." Margaret had driven up from Wheeling. She sat in the recliner by the window, her coat still on, her purse in her lap. She watched her son the way mothers watch their children, with a love so heavy it bends the light. "You look so much like my mom when she was young," Robert said to me. "I heard that," Margaret said. He grinned, then he got quiet. He held my hand with both of his. "I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't carry this anger forever. What your mother did was wrong, deeply wrong. But anger is heavy, Faith, and you've carried enough." "I'll try, Dad." And take care of Mom. She's stubborn as a mule, but she's got a good heart. I heard that too, Bobby. We laughed. All three of us. It was the first time and the last time we would laugh together. I got to hold my daughter's hand one more time, he said. That's all I ever wanted. 4 days later. 3:47 a.m. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Dana. Faith, you should come. I didn't ask questions. I pulled on jeans and a sweatshirt, grabbed my keys, and drove through empty streets with every light green, as though the city was clearing a path. Riverside was quiet the way it only gets between 3 and 5 in the morning. That deep, held breath quiet, where even the machines seemed to whisper. I walked into room 12B. Robert's breathing had changed. Long, slow, irregular. The spaces between breaths stretched wider each time. 10 seconds, 15, 20. I'd heard this pattern hundreds of times with other patients. I knew exactly what it meant. I sat down, took his hand. His fingers were cool. I pressed them between both of mine. It's okay, Dad, I said. I'm here. You can go. I don't know if he heard me. I want to believe he did. His eyelids moved. Not open, just a flutter, like someone dreaming. His hand tightened around mine. Once. Light, but unmistakable. At 4:12 a.m., Robert James Lawson exhaled, and the exhale didn't end. It just softened and softened until it became silence. The heart monitor flatlined. Dana came in, pressed 2 fingers to his wrist, looked at the clock, and wrote the time. I sat with him. 20 minutes. Maybe more. I didn't count. I held his hand and looked at the wooden heart on the bedside table and the slip of paper inside it. Faith Marie Lawson. My heart walks outside my body. Then I picked up my phone and called Wheeling. Is he? Margaret's voice was already broken. He's gone, Grandma. He was peaceful, and he wasn't alone. She sobbed once, hard. Then, he wasn't alone. Thank God, Faith. He wasn't alone. I had 19 days with my father. It should have been a lifetime. But those 19 days were enough to know. I was always loved. We buried Robert James Lawson in Wheeling on a Wednesday. The church was small. White paint, wooden pews, a stained glass window that threw colored light across the floor when the afternoon sun hit it. Thomas Harlan had organized everything. About 60 people came, neighbors, former clients who remembered the cabinets and bookshelves Robert had built for their homes, a few men from the hardware store where he'd bought lumber for 30 years. I sat in the front pew with Margaret. She wore a black dress and held my hand the entire service. Her grip was stronger than I expected. Thomas spoke first. He told the room about Robert's craftsmanship, the joints he cut so precise you couldn't fit a hair between them. He talked about the kind of neighbor Robert was, the one who showed up with a chainsaw after a storm, the one who fixed your porch railing and wouldn't take money for it. Then he talked about me. Bobby Lawson spent 32 years looking for his daughter, Thomas said. Some of you thought he was holding on to false hope. Some of you told him to let go. He never did. And 3 weeks before he died, Faith walked into his hospital room. That is not a coincidence. That is a father's love refusing to quit. I stood when Thomas finished. I hadn't prepared remarks. I didn't need to. I only had 19 days with my father. But in those 19 days, he taught me more about love than I learned in 32 years of lies. After the service, they came to me one by one. Bobby talked about you every day. He always believed you were alive. We thought he was crazy. He showed us your baby picture every Christmas, every single one. Thomas handed me a cardboard box. Inside, the complete file, the original letter, and a cassette tape. I played it in Margaret's kitchen that night. A baby's voice laughing. Then, "Da-da, da-da up!" Margaret and I listened to it 3 times, 1 month after the funeral. I met my mother at a coffee shop on Main Street in Dayton. Neutral territory. Not her house, not the church, not Riverside. She looked different. Thinner. Her hair was flat, unstyled. the first time I'd seen her in public without it done. Gerald had filed for divorce. The church had gone quiet. The phone had stopped ringing. She sat across from me with a cup she didn't touch. Faith, I know what I did was… Mom. I set my hands flat on the table. I'm not here to punish you, and I'm not here to forgive you, not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know. She flinched, but she didn't interrupt. Here's what I need you to understand. You stole 32 years from me and from my father. He died without getting those years back. I can't change that. Nobody can. The coffee shop hummed around us. A barista called a name. The espresso machine hissed. What I can do is decide what happens from here, and here's what happens. I held her gaze. I am Robert Lawson's daughter. That is part of my identity now. You don't get to erase it anymore. I will see Grandma Margaret. I will visit Wheeling. I will carry my father's name. Those are not requests. She stared at her untouched coffee. If you want a relationship with me, it starts with honesty. Complete honesty. Not excuses. Not, I did what I had to do. Not, you don't understand. The truth. All of it. Every piece you've hidden. What if I can't do that? She whispered. Then we don't have a relationship. And that will be your choice, Mom, not mine. I put a $5 bill on the table for the coffees, stood up, pushed in my chair. I loved the mother you pretended to be, I said. I'm still learning who you really are, and until you can show me that person, the real one, I need space. I walked out. The bell above the door rang behind me. 6 months later. I live in Wheeling now. I transferred to the hospice unit at the regional medical center. Same work, different hills. I moved into Margaret's house. She needed someone around. I needed a family that didn't require me to pretend. I kept Robert's workshop. It sits behind the house, a converted garage with a concrete floor and pegboard walls lined with chisels, planes, handsaws, clamps. Everything clean, everything in its place. A carpenter's cathedral. Thomas comes by on Saturdays. He's teaching me how to use the lathe. I'm terrible at it. My first attempt at a bowl looked like a lopsided hat. Robert would have laughed. Every morning, I drink my coffee in the workshop. I sit on the stool Robert built, maple, 3 legs, no wobble, and look out through the open bay door at the backyard. The same backyard where the maple tree dropped the branch he carved into a heart-shaped box for a baby girl he'd just met. On the workbench in front of me, the heart box, the gold F necklace, the photo of him holding me at 4 months, and 32 letters held together with a rubber band. I've read them all, some of them twice, some of them 100 times. Each one is a year, each one is proof. Margaret calls from the kitchen. Faith, breakfast? Coming, Grandma. I look around the workshop one more time. Sawdust in the corners. A half-finished birdhouse Robert never got to complete. The smell of oak and linseed oil. His hands were everywhere in this room. His patience, his stubbornness, his love. I lost 32 years, but I gained something my mother could never fabricate and never take away. The truth, and a family that never stopped looking for me. My name is Faith Lawson. I'm a hospice nurse. I'm Robert Lawson's daughter. And I was never, ever abandoned. So that's my story. The version my mother never wanted you to hear. If you had to choose between a comfortable lie and a painful truth, which would you pick? Type truth or lie in the comments. I want to know. And if this story hit you somewhere deep, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because there are fathers out there right now, searching for children they were told are dead. And there are daughters who've spent their whole lives believing a story that was never real. Check the description for more stories like this one. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening, and thank you for staying until the end.